A mother in Kolkata sold her own child for less than $1, not because she didn't love him, because she was holding a handful of something that, at that exact moment, was worth more than a human life. It wasn't gold, it wasn't medicine, it was rice. 3 million people died that year, not from bombs, not from bullets, from the absence of a plant so ordinary you probably have a bag of it in your kitchen right now. And what's terrifying is, it's happening again. Right now, in 2026, the same crisis is quietly building. This is the story of how one grain built and nearly destroyed half the world. This is the story of the most dangerous food on earth, not because it's poisonous, but because for over half of humanity, it's the difference between civilization and collapse. By the end of this video, you'll understand why one empire deliberately starved 3 million of its own people over a bowl of rice, and why right now, in 2026, the world is quietly terrified of running out of it again. But to understand why rice has this kind of power, we have to go back 9,000 years to a swamp in China and a plant nobody thought was worth farming. Around 7000 BCE, along the marshy banks of China's Yangtze River, early farmers noticed something strange. A wild wetland grass kept reseeding itself in the flooded mud, year after year, with almost no effort. That grass was Oryza sativa, wild rice. Unlike wheat or barley, rice didn't need fertile open plains. It thrived in water, which meant it could be grown almost anywhere people could dig a paddy and flood it. River deltas, terraced mountainsides, monsoon plains. It didn't just feed people, it let entire new regions become livable. Within a few thousand years, rice cultivation exploded from China into Korea, Japan, Vietnam, India, and beyond. But here's the part that most people miss. Rice didn't just feed empires. Rice paddies require organized irrigation, shared labor, and centralized planning to work at scale, which means wherever rice took over, hierarchy, taxation, and government followed right behind it. In Japan, this went further than almost anywhere else on earth. By the feudal era, wealth wasn't measured in gold. It was measured in koku, units of rice, a samurai's entire salary, a lord's entire status, a province's entire worth, all counted in bags of rice. Control the rice, and you controlled the country. But controlling rice cuts both ways, because the moment a government uses rice as a weapon of power, it can just as easily become a weapon against its own people. And nowhere did that turn more horrifying than in one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century. Fast forward to 1943. British-controlled Bengal, in modern-day India and Bangladesh. World War II is raging, and the British colonial government makes a decision that would kill more people than most battles of the entire war. To feed troops and fuel wartime industry, the British diverted rice supplies and boats away from Bengal, the same boats farmers used to move grain to market. Rice stockpiles were reserved for the military. Exports from the region were still allowed, even as local prices spiraled out of control. Meanwhile, propaganda insisted the crisis was just bad weather. It wasn't. Bengal's harvest that year wasn't even catastrophically low. This was a man-made famine. Streets in Kolkata filled with the starving. Mothers sold their children for a handful of rice. Bodies lined the roads faster than they could be buried. By the time it was over, an estimated 3 million people were dead, not from bullets, not from bombs, but from the deliberate mismanagement of a single crop. Winston Churchill, when told people were dying, is documented as having dismissed the famine and blamed Indians themselves for breeding like rabbits, a quote historians still debate and condemn to this day. Rice hadn't just built civilization. In Bengal, it became the instrument of one of the worst humanitarian catastrophes in modern history. Wait, it gets even crazier, because just 2 decades after Bengal, humanity almost solved hunger forever, and then created a brand new danger in the process. By the 1960s, Asia's population was booming, and experts were predicting mass famine within a generation. Enter IR-8, nicknamed Miracle Rice. Developed at the International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines, IR-8 was a new rice variety that produced nearly 10 times the yield of traditional strains, as long as it had fertilizer and irrigation. It spread across India, Indonesia, and the Philippines almost overnight. This was the heart of what became known as the Green Revolution, and it is credited with saving hundreds of millions of lives from starvation. But miracle came with a catch. Farmers abandoned thousands of traditional, genetically diverse rice varieties to grow this one dominant strain. Entire regions became dependent on chemical fertilizer and irrigation systems that drained rivers dry. And when everyone grows the same rice, everyone becomes vulnerable to the same disease, the same drought, the same failure, all at once. Humanity had solved hunger, and in doing so, it had quietly built a single point of failure for 1/3 of the planet's calories. And that single point of failure? It's not history. It's happening right now. In fact, in the last few years, the world got a terrifying preview of what happens when rice runs out again. In July 2023, India, the world's largest rice exporter, responsible for roughly 40% of all rice traded globally, abruptly banned the export of non-basmati white rice. The reason? Protecting domestic supply after erratic monsoons threatened the harvest. The effect was immediate and global. Prices spiked to their highest levels in over a decade. In the United States, stores like Costco saw customers panic buying and rationing bags of rice. In the Philippines, in Nigeria, in nations across Africa and Southeast Asia, where rice isn't a side dish but the literal foundation of daily survival, families faced grocery bills they couldn't afford. Rice feeds more people on Earth than any other single crop. Over 3.5 billion people depend on it as their primary source of calories. And climate change is now doing to rice what colonial policy once did to Bengal. Droughts and erratic monsoons are shrinking yields, while rising nighttime temperatures are shown to reduce rice grain quality and quantity in the very regions that can least afford to lose it. We built our entire modern civilization on the assumption that this one grain would always be there. And for the first time in decades, the world was forced to ask, what happens if it isn't? From a swamp grass in ancient China, to the currency of samurai lords, to the cause of a colonial genocide by neglect, to a scientific miracle that fed billions while quietly gambling with our food security, to a single export ban that shook grocery stores on the other side of the planet. Rice was never just food. It has been power, currency, weapon, and lifeline, sometimes all at once, for over 9,000 years. Half of humanity wakes up every single day and eats a food whose history is written in empire, famine, science, and now, climate anxiety. The next chapter of rice's story hasn't been written yet. But make no mistake, it's being written right now, in a warming climate, in fragile supply chains, in the paddies of farmers who have no idea their harvest might decide the fate of nations. If you want more hidden histories like this, the stories that are hiding in your kitchen, your grocery list, your everyday life, join us. Because the food you don't think twice about, it has a history that changed the world. Subscribe, and let's keep uncovering it together.